would like rich text editing in our form. If this were regular old JavaScript without React, we could use something like TinyMCE or CK Editor, which are some libraries that you can just drop in place of a text area, and it just kind of works. You can do some configuration if you want, but we want a component that's actually under React's control and uses state and all that good stuff. In the React world, Facebook has made something called Draft.js, a rich text editor framework for React, which is to say that Draft.js is a framework for building rich text editors in React, as opposed to being a rich text editor that you can just drop in itself. It's well documented, but it's a little complicated. So we're not going to learn how to make our own rich text editor out of that. We're going to take advantage of the fact that many, many other people have already done that thing. Now, interesting thing about the way Draft.js works and the way many editors that implement it work, you can't just, it doesn't just give you a string. So it wouldn't give us the body as a string. It would be this funky object that it syncs with state. So on state, we would have this wacky editor value that we would need to do something with. And you can, if you need to store that in a database, you can serialize it. That is, turn it from this object into a string that you can save, but it's not going to be readable. It's not going to be the body of our message in any readable format. Now, the nice thing is it holds more than just the text. It also holds things like where you left your cursor and if anything was highlighted and all that kind of stuff. It's a very sophisticated editor. But if we needed something that doesn't use React to also be able to read that thing, like we had a mobile app that for some reason wasn't using React, and we needed to be able to read that straight from Firebase, it wouldn't be in a readable format. But there are editors made out of Draft.js that give us rich text in a format that we might be able to do something with, such as React RTE, a pure React rich text WYSIWYG editor based on Draft.js. Heard WYSIWYG before? What's it stand for? What you see is what you get. So instead of typing out LI or something, you see a bulleted list as you make a bulleted list, and it does the conversion. And what React RTE does is gives us an easy way to export a string from these editors so that we can just like save it as HTML, which is something that we can use any number of places. It has a little demo here, reactrte.org. All right. This is some text. We see that puts that in a paragraph. Hit enter, and we get a new paragraph with a line break in it. As soon as we start typing something, yeah, emphasis, strong, cool. What if I want this to be a large heading? Yay, it makes it an H1. Cool. It even has a undo, redo. That looks usable. So how do we use it? First, we should probably add it to our project. So in the console, not in static note header, but the other one. In fact, let's close static note header so we don't confuse ourselves. Yarn add React-RTE. If you're still using npm, that would be npm install React RTE. And that does two things, right? It adds it to package.json. There it is. And it downloads it and puts it in node modules. If you just added edited package.json directly instead of using yarn add or npm install, it wouldn't put it in node modules, and you'd have to run yarn install or npm install. Because those commands without any arguments just look at everything that's in package.json and installs them. React RTE. Okay, cool. Then what? Example usage. Okay, they import rich text editor from React RTE. Rich text editor is the main editor component, which includes the draft.js editor, some UI components, such as a toolbar, and some helpful abstractions around getting and setting content with HTML or Markdown. Neat. So rich text editor is designed to be used like a text area, except that instead of value being a string, it's an object with toString on it. So you can create a value, the value that the editor expects, from a string using createValueFromString. And in their example, here we have rich text editor with a value and an onChange. And the value, you see, it gets from this.state.value, which is up here, and it uses rich text editor.createEmptyValue to create a value that the editor understands, because it doesn't understand just strings. So let's see if we can get that to work. So in our form, which helpfully is already a component, an actual class component, therefore we can use state. Let's add a constructor. Don't forget, you need to pass in your props. Call the constructor on the superclass and pass in the props. And then we'll set this.state and we'll set editor value. Almost forgot. Import rich text editor from React RTE. So the editor value needs to be not just an empty string or something, but rich text editor dot create empty value. And then instead of our text area, we have rich text editor, opening and closing tags. And the value cannot be the body from the current node. It's going to have to be this.state.editor value. It doesn't know what the heck to do with a string. Let's see what that gets us. Hey, it's a rich text editor. Well, that wasn't so bad. I thought you promised us wailing and gnashing of teeth, Davey. Oh, we're not done. Let's see what happens if we start trying to do stuff with this. Here's a new note. Oh, shucks. It exploded as soon as I put my cursor in there. Because it immediately ran handle changes. And it tried to read property name of undefined. Event.target is undefined, it says. What gives? If you look at their example, in the onChange, it looks like it doesn't receive an event as its argument, it receives a value. The value of the editor, which we know is this weird object that we can turn into a string. And we can turn a string into that, but it's not a string itself. So what it does is, yep, it sets the state to that new value. That seems like a good thing to do. So bottom line, we're going to have to treat this differently than we treat the title because it's no longer just a simple text form or a text area. So we have handle changes. I need another one for handle editor changes. And it's going to receive the editor value as its argument. Now, before I forget, I need to change the onChange event on rich text editor to handle editor changes. And first thing we know we want to do, this dot set state editor value. I'm going to update it with the new value, whatever we just typed in. So if we do that, didn't explode when I put my cursor in. Does it explode? No. Does it save the changes in the note? Also no. It's not doing anything with it. But it's not exploding. And hey, I can make rich text in there. So the state of the editor is now updating appropriately. We're not updating the note. So we need handle editor changes to still do the stuff that handle changes does. It still needs to actually save the note, right? So, okay, we have the note. Make a copy of it. Update, in this case, the body, right? Note.body equals, now not just editor value, right? That's not a string. How did it do that? Value dot to string, and it passed in HTML. Because I could do Markdown or HTML. Set state, editor value, note body equals editor value dot to string, pass in HTML. Then we need to call this .props.save note with our updated note, right? It's .props.save note with our updated note. Make sense? Does it work? Oh, did you see that? As soon as I clicked in there, I got my paragraph. So it works now. Yeah! Cool. If I refresh, do I get it back? Yep. Ah. Well, look, when I switch to that note, it doesn't pre-populate this darn thing. Why not? Well, in the constructor, we set it to create empty value. And then we keep updating it anytime the editor changes. But we don't do anything when we switch notes, when current note changes. So whenever we click something in the list here, what actually happens? Forget about the form for a moment. What do we do when we click one of these? Set current note, right? And it's through the set current note prop, or the current note prop, that the form finds out which note it's editing. And that'll have the body in it. But we're not setting this thing to have that body. So that would need to happen anytime current note changes. Remember our lifecycle methods? We've used component will mount and component did mount. There are also some methods that are called by changes to props or state, such as component will receive props, should component update, component will update, and component did update. So component will receive props gets called when the props change. And notice it's will, not did. So it runs right before the props change. So if the props are about to change, it runs component will receive props. And it looks like it receives as its argument what the props are about to change to. So when we run component will receive props, this dot props will still be the old props. Next props that's passed in will be the new props. So let's see if we can see that happening. Component will receive props. We'll run this right after the constructor. Constructor, component will receive props. And again, we can only do this because it's a class, because we inherit these things from React component. And there's something built into the React component class that runs these things at the right time. So it's not going to do us any good to add this to a stateless functional component. So component will receive props, receives next props as its argument. And let's just console log current props, this dot props, next props, colon next props, but we know we can use the shorthand. Let's see what that gets us. So this should run any time this component's about to receive some props. Okay. Current props, next props. Let's clear the console. And let's click on one of these. Sure enough, it runs. And we see current props, current note is a blank one. Next props, current note is the one I just clicked on. Right? So basically, we want the body of the new note to update our editor value. But I can tell you right now some weird stuff is going to happen. So when the editor changes, it's going to update the editor value in the state within note form. And eventually it's going to call save note, which is going to change app state, right? Which is going to change our props. So everything we type in here is going to change our incoming props as well. So that's going to run after every single thing we type. And then if we try to set the editor value from that, well, the editor value just changed again. So it's going to do it again. Bottom line, it's going to do really weird stuff. Let's see just a little of that. But try not, you don't need to type along with this to minimize confusion. But let's say, okay, let editor value equal whatever it is right now. This dot state dot editor value. And Well, first we need the new note, right? So const note equals next props, right? The new ones. Next props dot current note. I'll put these in the opposite order. And what I want to see is if the current editor value is not the same as the current note's body, then I need to update it. So I'll put this down here. If editor value, now remember that's not a string, so we'll call to string HTML. It's not double equal to note.body, right? Note is next props.current note. Then I want to change the editor value. This is why I made this let, not const. To be note.body converted into an editor value. Because editor value can't be a string, right? We use rich text editor.createEmptyValue to do one. And in the example, somewhere we saw, oh yeah, creating a value from a string is also easy, using create value from string. And then you pass it the string, and you tell it that it's HTML. So if the string version of the editor value is not equal to the body of the note, set editor value to create value from string, note.body, HTML. So that I'll turn it from a string to one of these editor values. And then we can update state with the new editor value. Does that make sense? Nope, create value from string is not defined because it is rich text editor dot create value from string. Let's see what happens. I click on one of these. Hey, it did it. What? I put it at the beginning and it's writing it backwards. Yes. Not exactly what we were going for. So this is weird. Every time we type something in there, we're updating the state. Then we're updating the note, which updates the props, which calls this thing, which I don't know. I don't know why note.body isn't the right thing. Console log note.body. And yeah, let's also throw editor value in there. Editor value should be editor value dot to string HTML. Let's see what happens. Yep, exploded. Editor value was used before it was defined. Yep. We'll throw this right here. All right, so we did this, and it looks okay. I mean, sort of. Let's start typing. Okay, right now they're equal. I type an H. Okay, so it has H in here, but it has the editor value of not having the H. And then it calls it again right away. And now they are equal. So why did the editor value not update? We set state with that. And it did it backwards. So the editor value seems to be lagging behind, despite the fact that we already changed it down here. Set state editor value. Oh yeah. But the editor value is whatever format it expects. When we change it from the HTML string into that, it's not exactly the same. Because remember, it has extra information in it, like where the cursor is and stuff like that. And that gets screwed up when we convert it back from a string. So what we're going to have to do is move the current note out of app and make it part of the state on note form. Because doing it this way is just screwing things up. So we're going to have to move state back down here. Bummer, man. So let's just forget about this part right now, because that's breaking things. Because at least now we can add a new note and add some rich text to it, and that works. It just doesn't work when we switch to a different note. So we'll commit this, but we'll commit it as a work in progress, because it isn't totally working yet. So I'll say WIP, this is pretty common by the way, work in progress, add rich text editing.